the teachings of gratitude find you wherever you rest tonight. Before we journey together into these ancient wisdoms about appreciation and thankfulness, I invite you to share in the comments where you are in this beautiful world right now. Your city, your country, what time it is where you're listening. There is something deeply moving about knowing that across continents and time zones, hearts like yours are seeking the same peace, the same understanding of how gratitude can transform suffering into grace. We are woven together in this moment, you and I, connected by our shared longing for deeper meaning, for the capacity to appreciate what we have rather than mourning what we lack. Tonight, you need not strive or achieve or become anything other than what you already are. These stories are not lessons to master, but gentle reminders of the wisdom that already lives inside you, waiting patiently to be awakened. Simply breathe, simply rest, and allow these truths to settle into you like rain soaking into thirsty earth. Let your body grow heavier with each breath, sinking deeper into whatever supports you now. Let us begin this sacred journey into the transformative power of gratitude. In the fog-wrapped streets of San Francisco, California, there lived a woman named Victoria, whose life looked perfect from every angle except the one that mattered most: her own. She was 36 years old, a technology executive at a company whose products were used by millions, and she had everything the world told her should make her happy. A stunning apartment in Pacific Heights, with sweeping views of the Golden Gate Bridge, a six-figure salary that allowed her any luxury she desired, respect from colleagues who valued her strategic mind and relentless work ethic, invitations to exclusive events, vacations in exotic locations, a carefully curated Instagram feed that attracted thousands of followers who envied her seemingly flawless existence. But Victoria woke up every morning with a hollow ache in her chest that no achievement could fill, no purchase could satisfy, no validation from strangers could heal. She would stand at her floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sunrise paint the bridge in shades of gold and orange, surrounded by expensive furniture and designer clothes and all the markers of success, and feel absolutely nothing. Not gratitude for what she had, not joy in her accomplishments, not appreciation for the privileged life she led, just a vast, echoing emptiness that whispered the same cruel message every day: this isn't enough. You're not enough. There must be something more. Her relationship with her assistant Keiko had become strained over the past year. Keiko was a young woman from Osaka who had moved to San Francisco to pursue her dreams, working 2 jobs to afford a tiny studio in the Tenderloin while sending money back to support her aging parents. Victoria would watch Keiko arrive each morning with a genuine smile despite her exhaustion. He would hear her express sincere gratitude for small kindnesses like Victoria, remembering her coffee order or giving her Friday afternoons off. And Victoria couldn't understand it. How could Keiko, who had so little, who struggled financially, who lived in a neighborhood Victoria wouldn't even drive through, how could she be so consistently happy while Victoria, who had everything, felt so utterly miserable? One Thursday morning, Victoria snapped at Keiko over something trivial, a scheduling conflict that could have been easily resolved. Keiko had apologized profusely, but Victoria saw tears forming in the young woman's eyes before she turned away. The guilt hit Victoria immediately, but she buried it under irritation, under the familiar narrative that she was stressed, that she had important work to do, that other people just didn't understand the pressure she was under. That evening, Victoria was working late as usual when Keiko knocked softly on her office door. "Ms. Victoria, I'm leaving now. Is there anything else you need?" Victoria looked up, ready to dismiss her, but something in Keiko's expression stopped her. Despite the earlier harshness, despite the tears, Keiko's face held no resentment, no coldness, just gentle kindness and what looked like concern. "Keiko, why do you always seem so happy?" Victoria asked abruptly, the question escaping before she could stop it. "You work 2 jobs. You live in a terrible neighborhood. You're barely making ends meet. How are you not miserable?" Keiko looked surprised by the question, then thoughtful. She stepped into the office and sat down carefully on the edge of the chair across from Victoria's desk. "May I be honest with you, Ms. Victoria?" Victoria nodded, suddenly desperate to understand. "I am happy because I practice gratitude every day," Keiko said simply. "Each morning when I wake up, before I even get out of bed, I think of 3 things I'm grateful for. Some days it's big things, like my health or my family. Some days it's very small, like the way the morning light comes through my window, or that I have hot water for tea. This practice, it changes how I see everything." Victoria felt skepticism rising. "Gratitude? That's it? Just thinking positive thoughts makes you happy?" Keiko shook her head gently. "It's not about positive thinking. It's about training myself to notice what I have instead of only seeing what I lack. Before I started this practice 3 years ago, I was very depressed. I had just moved here. I was lonely. I felt like a failure because I was struggling financially. Every day I compared my life to others and felt terrible." She paused, her eyes distant with memory. "Then my grandmother, who raised me, became very ill back in Japan. I couldn't afford to fly home to see her. I was angry, so angry at the universe for making me poor, for putting me in this situation. But she called me from the hospital, and do you know what she said?" Victoria leaned forward slightly, drawn in despite herself. "What did she say?" She said, "Keiko-san, I am so grateful that I got to raise you. So grateful for every moment we had together. Don't waste your precious life being angry about what you can't control. Be grateful for what we've shared. That gratitude will sustain you when I'm gone." Keiko's voice caught slightly. She died 2 days later. I never got to see her again, but her last words to me became my practice. Every morning, I honor her by choosing gratitude. Victoria felt something crack in her chest. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "It's okay," Keiko said softly. "What I learned from losing her is that gratitude isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about acknowledging what is good, what is working, what you do have, even when life is also hard. My grandmother taught me that we can hold both truths at once. Life is difficult and I am blessed. I am struggling and I have so much. I have lost someone precious and I am grateful for the time we had." She stood to leave, then turned back. "Ms. Victoria, you have so much. Your apartment, your job, your opportunities. But I don't think you see any of it. I think you only see what's missing. Maybe that's why you're not happy, even with everything you have." After Keiko left, Victoria sat in her office as the city lights flickered on below, turning the words over in her mind. She tried to remember the last time she'd felt genuinely grateful for anything. She couldn't. Every good thing in her life had become invisible, taken for granted. Just the baseline from which she measured what she still lacked. Her beautiful apartment was just where she slept between working. Her high salary was never quite enough because she compared it to people who made more. Her accomplishments felt hollow because there was always a higher position to chase, more recognition to pursue, another milestone that would surely be the one that finally made her feel complete. That night, Victoria lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep as Keiko's words echoed through her mind. On impulse, she reached for her phone and typed into the search bar, "Buddhist gratitude practice." The results led her to an article about a meditation teacher in the Mission District named James, who taught what he called gratitude meditation, based on Buddhist principles. The following Saturday, Victoria found herself in a small community center on Valencia Street, sitting on a cushion among a dozen other people for James's weekly class. James was a man in his 52s, with warm eyes and a gentle presence that immediately put her at ease, despite her discomfort with the unfamiliar setting. Gratitude, James began, is one of the most powerful practices in Buddhism, not because it makes us feel good, though it often does, but because it fundamentally changes our relationship with reality. Most of us spend our lives in a state the Buddha called tanha, which is often translated as craving or desire, but is more accurately understood as the feeling that this moment is not enough, that we need something else, something more, something different to be okay. Victoria felt exposed, as if he were speaking directly to her. James continued, "We think if we just get the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right accomplishments, then we'll finally be satisfied. But it doesn't work that way. The hedonic treadmill keeps moving. Each thing we achieve becomes the new baseline, and we're immediately looking for the next thing. This is why people who have everything can still feel empty. Not because they're ungrateful or broken, but because they're trapped in tanha, in the endless cycle of wanting more." He paused, looking around the circle. Gratitude practice interrupts this cycle. It trains us to notice what we already have, to appreciate what's already here, to see the abundance that exists in this present moment rather than only seeing what's missing. This isn't toxic positivity. We're not pretending problems don't exist. We're choosing to also acknowledge what's working, what's good, what we're blessed with. They began a meditation practice. James instructed them to bring to mind 3 things they were genuinely grateful for. Not things they thought they should be grateful for, but things that actually touched their hearts when they considered them. Victoria struggled. Her mind kept offering the obvious things: her apartment, her job. But these felt hollow, like she was checking boxes rather than feeling actual gratitude. Then, unexpectedly, an image came to her. Keiko's face, when she'd shared the story about her grandmother. The vulnerability and kindness in her expression, even after Victoria had been harsh with her earlier that day. Victoria felt a sudden rush of genuine appreciation for Keiko's patience with her, for her willingness to be honest, for staying despite Victoria's difficult behavior. The gratitude felt warm and real in a way Victoria hadn't experienced in years. The second thing that arose surprised her even more. Her morning coffee, not the expensive imported beans or the fancy espresso machine, but the simple act of standing in her kitchen each morning, holding a warm mug, taking that first sip. When had she stopped noticing this small daily pleasure? When had it become so automatic that she no longer even tasted it? The third took longer to find, but eventually she landed on it: her body's health. She was 36 years old, and her body worked. Her heart beat, without her asking it to. Her lungs breathed. Her legs carried her where she needed to go. She had never once paused to feel grateful for this, had only noticed her body when it didn't do what she wanted, when she felt tired or got a headache, or when her clothes felt tight. The absence of major illness had been completely invisible to her until this moment when James asked her to notice it. After the meditation, James invited people to share their experiences. Victoria normally would have stayed silent, but something made her raise her hand. "I realized," she said quietly, "that I have so much that I've been completely blind to. I've been living in a beautiful apartment without seeing it, drinking coffee without tasting it, walking around in a healthy body without appreciating it. Everything good has become invisible because I only focus on what I don't have yet." James nodded with understanding. That's the default mode for most of us. The brain is wired to notice problems and threats, to focus on what needs fixing. Gratitude is a practice because it doesn't come naturally. We have to train ourselves to notice the good, to appreciate what's working. It's like building a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it gets. Over the following weeks, Victoria committed to the practice Keiko had described. Each morning before getting out of bed, before reaching for her phone, before letting her mind race toward her to-do list, she would pause and bring to mind 3 things she was grateful for. Some mornings it felt forced, mechanical, like she was just going through the motions. But other mornings, something would shift and the gratitude would feel real, would touch something genuine in her chest. She started noticing things she'd been blind to for years. The way sunlight streamed through her windows in the late afternoon, turning everything golden. The kindness of the barista at her neighborhood cafe, who always remembered she preferred oat milk. The sound of foghorns from the bay at night, a sound she'd been hearing for years without really listening to. The reliability of the bus driver on her route, who greeted everyone warmly. These small, ordinary things that had been invisible started coming into focus, like adjusting a camera lens and suddenly seeing details that had always been there but blurred. Her relationship with Keiko transformed as well. Victoria started really seeing her assistant, not just as someone who managed her schedule, but as a whole person with her own struggles and joys and remarkable resilience. She began asking Keiko about her life, her family in Japan, her dreams beyond her current jobs. She learned that Keiko was studying web design in the evenings, hoping eventually to build her own business. Victoria found herself wanting to support this, not because it served her own needs, but because she genuinely cared about Keiko's success. One morning, about 2 months into her gratitude practice, Victoria woke up and realized something had changed. The hollow ache in her chest that had been her constant companion for years had quieted, not disappeared entirely, but softened into something more like a gentle reminder rather than a crushing weight. She stood at her windows watching the sunrise, as she did every morning, but this time instead of feeling nothing, she felt moved by the beauty, grateful to witness it, aware that this moment, this specific sunrise, would never come again. She pulled out her phone and texted Keiko. Even though it was barely 6 a.m., "Thank you for teaching me about gratitude. You changed my life and I've never properly thanked you." Keiko's response came a few minutes later. "You changed too. I see the difference in you. My grandmother would say you woke up." That phrase stayed with Victoria all day. Woke up. That's exactly what it felt like. She'd been sleepwalking through her life, surrounded by abundance but unable to see it, unable to feel it. always looking ahead to the next thing that would supposedly make her happy. The gratitude practice hadn't changed her external circumstances at all. She still had the same job, same apartment, same income. But her internal experience had transformed completely. The world looked different when you noticed what was good in it, instead of only seeing what was missing. 3 months into her practice, Victoria attended James's class again. This time when he asked people to share. Victoria spoke about a specific incident from that week. I was stuck in traffic on the Bay Bridge for over an hour. Normally, this would have ruined my entire day. I would have been furious, stressed, spiraling into thoughts about everything I was missing. Everyone I was disappointing by being late. But this time, I noticed I was doing that, and I chose differently. She paused, still amazed by what had happened. I looked around and saw I was in a car that worked, that protected me from the rain that was falling. I had music I loved to listen to. I had the ability to call and let people know I'd be late. I had nowhere I urgently needed to be that couldn't wait an hour. And I had this hour, this gift of unexpected time, where I didn't have to do anything but sit and breathe and exist. It sounds simple, but it was profound. I turned a frustrating situation into an opportunity for gratitude just by changing what I focused on. James smiled broadly. This is the practice in action. Not avoiding or denying the frustration, but choosing to also notice what's working, what you do have. You can be stuck in traffic and grateful to have a car. You can be stressed at work and grateful to have work. You can be tired and grateful to have a body capable of tiredness because it means you've been active, engaged with life. Both things can be true simultaneously. A man across the circle from Victoria raised his hand. But isn't this just settling? Just accepting things that aren't good enough? If I'm grateful for my terrible job, won't that stop me from pursuing a better one? James shook his head. Gratitude isn't about settling or becoming complacent. You can be deeply grateful for what you have, while also working toward change. In fact, gratitude gives you more energy for change because you're not depleting yourself with resentment and complaint. You're acknowledging what's working while addressing what isn't. He continued, the Buddha taught about the middle way, the path between two extremes. One extreme is constant craving, never being satisfied, always needing more. The other extreme is complete detachment, not caring about anything. Gratitude is the middle way. It allows you to appreciate what you have while still growing, still evolving, still working toward your goals. You're not trapped in either grasping or apathy. You're present with what is, while staying open to what could be. This teaching settled into Victoria like truth she'd always known but forgotten. She could be grateful for her current job, while also considering whether it aligned with her deepest values. She could appreciate her apartment while exploring whether she wanted to live somewhere else. She could value what she had while still dreaming, still striving, still changing. Gratitude wasn't a cage. It was liberation from the exhausting belief that happiness was always somewhere else, always in the future, always conditional on getting what she didn't yet have. 4 months into her practice, Victoria made a decision that surprised everyone who knew her, especially herself. She turned down a promotion that would have meant significantly more money and prestige, but also significantly more hours and stress. The old Victoria would have taken it without question, would have seen it as the next rung on the ladder she'd been climbing her entire adult life. But this Victoria paused and asked different questions. Would this role allow her to live in alignment with her values, Would it give her time for the practices that had brought her back to life? Would it serve something meaningful, or just her ego's endless need for validation? The answers were clear. This promotion would pull her back into the tanha James had described, the endless cycle of wanting more, achieving it, then immediately needing the next thing. She would lose the hard-won peace she'd found through gratitude practice. She would sacrifice the life she was finally learning to appreciate for the promise of future satisfaction that would never actually come. When Victoria told her boss she was declining the promotion, his confusion was palpable. "Victoria, I don't understand. This is what you've been working toward for years. Why would you turn it down now?" She chose her words carefully. "Because I've learned that climbing higher doesn't necessarily mean living better. I'm grateful for the opportunity, truly, but I'm also grateful for the life I have right now. And this promotion would destroy that balance. For the first time in my adult life, I'm actually happy. I'm not willing to sacrifice that for a title and more money." Her boss stared at her as if she'd spoken a foreign language. In the world they inhabited, turning down advancement was incomprehensible. But Victoria felt no doubt, no regret, only a clear certainty that she was choosing rightly, choosing herself, choosing the quality of her daily life over the hollow promise of future satisfaction. The decision rippled through her life in unexpected ways. With the mental space that would have been consumed by the demanding new role, Victoria found herself exploring interests she'd abandoned years ago. She started painting again, something she'd loved in college but dismissed as impractical when she entered the corporate world. She joined a community garden in the Mission District, where she met neighbors she'd lived near for years but never spoken to. She volunteered teaching basic financial literacy to immigrants at a non-profit where Keiko also volunteered, and discovered that helping others brought a satisfaction her corporate achievements never had. One Saturday morning at the community garden, Victoria was planting tomatoes alongside a woman named Ruth who had immigrated from Jamaica 30 years earlier and now, in her 70 Sekunde, tended her plot with obvious joy. Ruth moved slowly, her hands gnarled with arthritis, but her face radiated contentment as she worked the soil. "You always look so happy here," Victoria observed, wiping sweat from her forehead. "What's your secret?" Ruth laughed. A rich, warm sound. "No secret, child. Just gratitude. I'm grateful I can still get down on my knees to garden even if getting back up takes a minute. Grateful for this earth that feeds us. Grateful for neighbors like you who help an old woman with the heavy lifting. When you get to be my age, you realize every day above ground is a gift. Every tomato that grows is a small miracle. Can't take any of it for granted." She paused in her planting, looking directly at Victoria. "I see young people like you, always rushing, always stressed, always chasing something. My advice? Stop running toward the future and start living in the present. This moment right here, your hands in the dirt, the sun on your face, that's life. Not some future moment when you've achieved everything. This, right now." Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes. "I'm learning that. Slowly. That's all any of us can do," Ruth said gently. "Learn slowly. Practice daily. Be patient with yourself." 6 months into her gratitude practice, Victoria's transformation had become visible to everyone in her life. Her mother, calling from Portland, commented on how different she sounded, lighter somehow, more present in their conversations instead of distracted and rushing to get off the phone. Her colleagues noticed she smiled more, snapped less, seemed genuinely interested in their lives beyond their professional contributions. Even strangers remarked on it. The barista at her cafe, saying one morning, "I don't know what's changed, but your energy is so different. You used to come in looking stressed and now you look peaceful." Victoria realized that gratitude had done more than change her internal experience. It had changed how she moved through the world, how she interacted with others, the energy she brought to every encounter. When you're consumed by what you lack, you have nothing to give. When you're aware of your abundance, even small abundance, generosity flows naturally. She found herself tipping more generously, complimenting people spontaneously, offering help without being asked, because she had stopped operating from a scarcity mindset and started operating from abundance. One evening, Victoria invited Keiko to dinner, not as her assistant but as her friend, to a nice restaurant in North Beach. Over pasta and wine, Victoria said something she'd been wanting to say for months. "Keiko, I need to thank you properly. That conversation we had almost 7 months ago, when you told me about your grandmother and your gratitude practice, it saved my life. I was so deeply unhappy and I didn't even fully realize it. You gave me a doorway to a completely different way of living." Keiko's eyes filled with tears. "You honor my grandmother by practicing what she taught me. She always said that the teachings we receive are meant to be shared. That wisdom grows when we give it away. I shared what she gave me, and you're sharing it with others through how you live. That's how her love keeps spreading, even though she's gone." Victoria reached across the table and took Keiko's hand. "I also need to apologize. I was a terrible boss for a long time. Demanding, impatient, treating you like a tool rather than a person. I'm sorry. You weren't terrible," Keiko said kindly. "You were suffering. Hurt people, as they say. But you did the work to heal, to change. That takes courage. I'm proud to work with you and honored to be your friend." After dinner, walking through the lamplit streets of North Beach, Victoria felt overwhelmed by the richness of her life. Not the material richness she'd once chased, though she still had that, but a different kind altogether. The richness of genuine friendship, of work that felt meaningful even without the prestigious title, of simple pleasures noticed and savored, of this moment, this evening, this conversation, this walk through beautiful streets with someone she cared about. This was wealth beyond any salary, success beyond any promotion. 7 months into her practice, Victoria was invited to speak on a panel at a tech conference about work-life balance. The old Victoria would have prepared a polished presentation full of productivity hacks and time management strategies. This Victoria spoke honestly about her journey from achievement-obsessed and miserable to content and grateful. For years, she told the audience of young professionals, "I believed the lie that success would make me happy. I climbed the ladder, achieved every goal, got every promotion, made more money than I'd ever dreamed of. And I was profoundly unhappy because I was always focused on what I didn't have yet instead of appreciating what I did have." She paused, looking out at the faces watching her. "Then I learned about gratitude practice from my assistant, who had far less than me materially, but far more joy. She taught me to start each day by noticing 3 things I was grateful for. It sounds too simple to work, but it completely transformed my life. Not because my circumstances changed. They didn't. But because I changed how I related to my circumstances. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. But didn't you feel like you were giving up? Like you were settling by not taking the promotion? By choosing gratitude over ambition? Victoria smiled, recognizing her former self in that question. I thought I might feel that way. But here's what I discovered. Gratitude isn't the opposite of ambition. It's the foundation for healthy ambition. When you're chasing success because you think it will finally make you enough, finally make you worthy, finally make you happy, that's exhausting and it's never satisfied. But when you start from a place of already feeling grateful, already feeling enough, you can pursue goals from a completely different energy. Not from desperate lack, but from inspired possibility. She continued, I still have goals. I still work hard. But now I'm working toward things because they align with my values and bring meaning. Not because I'm trying to fill a void or prove something. And paradoxically, I'm actually more effective now because I'm not operating from anxiety and scarcity. Gratitude gave me the foundation to build a life I actually want to live, not just a resume that looks impressive. After her talk, dozens of people approached her, many with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of achievement without satisfaction, of success that felt hollow. Victoria gave each person the same advice. Start with 3 things each morning. Just 3. The practice seems too simple to matter, but it rewires your brain over time. It teaches you to notice abundance instead of only seeing scarcity. 1 year after beginning her gratitude practice, Victoria woke on a Saturday morning and lay in bed doing her usual 3 gratitudes. But this morning, something was different. Instead of having to search for things to be grateful for, her mind was flooded with appreciation. Grateful for the soft sheets against her skin, for the bird song outside her window, for Keiko's friendship, for Ruth at the community garden, for her health, for her work, for this apartment she'd been living in for years but only recently started truly appreciating, for the difficult year that had led her to this practice, for her suffering, even because it had been the doorway to transformation. The gratitude felt so overwhelming she started crying. But these were tears of joy, of recognizing how much abundance existed in her life when she paid attention, when she stopped taking everything for granted. She had spent years living in paradise without seeing it, eating from a feast while feeling starved, because her attention was always on what was missing rather than what was present. She thought about the teaching James had shared a few weeks earlier, a story about the Buddha and a student who asked, "What is the secret to happiness?" The Buddha picked up a handful of dirt and said, "See this dirt? Hold it loosely and it stays in your hand. Grasp it tightly and it slips through your fingers. Everything in life is like this dirt. Appreciate it without grasping. Enjoy it without clinging. Be grateful for what you have while holding it lightly, knowing it will change." Victoria had been grasping her entire life, trying to hold on to achievements, to accumulate more and more, to grasp her way to happiness. The gratitude practice had taught her to hold everything loosely, to appreciate without clutching, to recognize abundance without needing to possess or control it. That afternoon, Victoria met with a career coach she'd been seeing, a woman named Patricia who specialized in helping people find more meaningful work. Victoria had started these sessions thinking she might need to completely change careers to find fulfillment. But as she talked with Patricia about her journey over the past year, She realized something unexpected. "I don't think I need to change my job," Victoria said slowly, the realization forming as she spoke. "I need to keep changing my relationship with my job. The work itself is fine, sometimes even meaningful. The problem was never really the work. The problem was that I was using work to try to prove my worth, to fill a void, to chase a moving target of enough. When I let go of that impossible task and started approaching my work from gratitude, from appreciation for the skills I've developed and the opportunities I have, everything shifted." Patricia nodded with understanding. "That's profound. Most people think external change is required. New job, new city, new relationship. But often the deepest transformation comes from internal change, from shifting how we relate to what we already have. Your circumstances haven't changed much in a year, but your experience of those circumstances has transformed completely." "Exactly," Victoria said. "A year ago, I had a beautiful apartment I couldn't see, a good job I resented, a salary I felt was never enough, health I took for granted. Now I have the same apartment, same job, similar salary, same health. But I'm genuinely happy because I've learned to notice and appreciate what I have. The gratitude practice didn't change my life. It changed me. And when I changed, my experience of life transformed." Let your breathing deepen now, becoming slower, softer, like gentle waves washing onto shore. Victoria's story shows us how gratitude can transform suffering into appreciation, how the simple practice of noticing what we have can heal the chronic disease of never feeling satisfied. She had everything and felt empty. Then she learned to appreciate what she already had and discovered abundance beyond her imagining. The practice didn't change her external world. It changed her internal landscape, and that changed everything. This teaching about gratitude, about training ourselves to notice abundance rather than focusing only on scarcity, reveals itself differently across different lives. Sometimes the lesson comes not through having everything and failing to appreciate it, but through losing what we took for granted and discovering gratitude on the other side of loss. In the quiet suburbs of Auckland, New Zealand, there lived a man named Graham who had spent 52 years of his life with perfect hearing and never once thought to be grateful for it. He was a music teacher at a secondary school in Mount Eden, and sound was so fundamental to his existence that appreciating it would have been like a fish appreciating water, too constant and essential to notice. Graham taught students to listen critically, to distinguish subtle differences in pitch and tone, to hear the emotion in a musical phrase, to understand how rhythm and melody work together to create meaning. His ears were his primary tool, finely tuned instruments that he used professionally and personally without ever pausing to feel grateful for their function. Then one morning in April, Graham woke up and the world had gone quiet. Not completely silent, but muffled, as if someone had stuffed cotton in both his ears. He assumed it was congestion from a cold, would clear up in a day or two, but it didn't clear. It worsened. By the end of the week, Graham could barely hear his students singing. By the end of the month, he was struggling to hear conversations even in quiet rooms. The audiologist's diagnosis was devastating. Sudden sensorineural hearing loss in both ears. Cause unknown. Prognosis uncertain. They tried steroids, other medications, but nothing restored what he'd lost. Within 3 months of that April morning, Graham had lost 70% of his hearing. The grief was catastrophic. Music, which had been the language of his soul for his entire life, became an echo of itself. He could no longer hear the delicate nuances in a piano piece, the subtle harmonies in a choral arrangement, the whispered confession of a student struggling with self-doubt. The world had gone flat, muffled, like living behind a thick pane of glass that separated him from everything he loved. Graham tried hearing aids, but they amplified everything indiscriminately, turning the world into an assault of noise without clarity. He tried lip reading, but found it exhausting and inexact. He withdrew from social situations where he couldn't follow conversations, stopped going to concerts that now brought only frustration, avoided his colleagues who tried to include him but whose words he could no longer reliably understand. His wife Bronwyn watched him disappear into depression, tried everything to reach him. But Graham was drowning in a sea of loss and couldn't find his way back to shore. He went on medical leave from teaching, unable to bear the classroom where his deafness made him feel incompetent, where students had to repeat themselves multiple times, where the job he'd loved had become a daily reminder of everything he'd lost. 4 months after the hearing loss began, Bronwyn found Graham sitting in their garden at dusk, tears streaming silently down his face. She sat beside him, took his hand, and said loudly enough for him to hear, "I know you're grieving, but I'm losing you to this grief. Please, please talk to someone. There's a support group for people with hearing loss. Will you just try? Once?" Graham wanted to say no, wanted to stay locked in his fortress of grief where no one could reach him. But something in Bronwyn's face, the desperation mixed with love, made him nod. The support group met weekly at a community centre in Ponsonby. Graham arrived expecting to find a room full of elderly people with age-related hearing loss, people whose experience would have nothing to do with his own sudden catastrophic loss at 52. But the group was surprisingly diverse. People of all ages who had lost hearing through illness, accident, genetic conditions, unknown causes. The facilitator was a woman in her 60s named Margaret, who had been profoundly deaf since childhood. She communicated through a combination of sign language, lip reading, and written notes. She welcomed Graham warmly and invited him to share his story if he felt comfortable. Graham found himself pouring out his grief to these strangers who understood in ways his hearing friends and family couldn't. "I feel like I've lost my identity," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was a music teacher. Music was my life. Now I can barely hear it. Who am I without that? What's the point of my life if I can't do the one thing I was good at?" An older man named Winston, who had lost his hearing in a construction accident 20 years earlier, spoke up. "I felt exactly that way when I lost mine. I was a sound engineer, worked in studios with musicians. My whole world was sound. When I went deaf, I thought my life was over. That was 20 years ago. Now, I can tell you that losing my hearing was the worst thing and the best thing that ever happened to me." Graham looked at him skeptically. "How could it possibly be the best thing?" Winston smiled gently. "Because it forced me to discover gratitude. Before I went deaf, I took sound completely for granted. I never once paused to appreciate that I could hear my daughter's laugh, hear rain on the roof, hear my wife's voice. Sound was just there, invisible, like the air I breathed. I never valued it because I'd never lost it." He continued, "After I went deaf, I went through what you're going through now. Deep grief, depression, feeling like my life was over. But eventually, with help, I started to come out of it. And when I did, I discovered that I could be grateful for what I'd had. Grateful for 50 years of hearing. Grateful for all the music I'd experienced. All the conversations I'd had. All the sounds I'd been privileged to hear. Winston leaned forward, his eyes intense. I also discovered I could be grateful for what I still have. I still have sight. I still have touch. I still have my mind, my relationships, my ability to communicate in different ways. I learned sign language, became part of the deaf community, discovered a whole rich culture I never knew existed. I found new work as an ASL interpreter. I built a life that's different from the one I had, but not less valuable. Graham felt something stir in his chest. Something that wasn't quite hope, but wasn't despair either. But don't you miss it? Don't you wish you could hear again? Every single day. Winston said, honestly. But I've learned to hold both truths. I miss what I lost and I'm grateful for what I have. Both are real. The gratitude doesn't erase the loss, but it makes the loss bearable. It gives me a foundation to build from instead of just drowning in grief. A young woman named Aroha, who couldn't have been more than 30, spoke next. I was born hearing and went deaf from meningitis when I was 25. I'm a dancer, or I was. I thought losing my hearing meant losing dance, but I learned that I can still feel rhythm through vibrations, can still move to music I experience through my body rather than my ears. It's different, but it's still dance. I had to let go of what dance used to be before I could discover what it could still be. She looked at Graham with understanding. You'll probably never teach music the same way you did before, but that doesn't mean you can't teach at all. Maybe you teach differently. Maybe you teach different things. Maybe your hearing loss gives you insights that hearing teachers don't have. Maybe you can help students who struggle, who feel like they don't belong. Because now you know what it's like to lose something fundamental. Over the following months, Graham kept attending the group. Slowly, incrementally, he began to shift from drowning in loss to noticing what remained. He started a gratitude practice, suggested by Margaret, writing down 3 things each day that he was still grateful for despite his deafness. The first week was brutal. His list felt forced, hollow. Grateful for Bronwyn's patience. Grateful for a sunny day. Grateful for tea. The words felt empty, like he was just going through motions. But Margaret had warned him this would happen. Gratitude is a muscle, she'd said. It atrophies when we don't use it. And most people go their whole lives not using it. You're rebuilding something from nothing. Be patient. Keep practicing even when it feels fake. Eventually it will become real. By the 2nd month, something began to shift. Graham wrote, "Grateful I can still see the sunrise. Grateful I can still feel Bronwyn's hand in mine. Grateful for the 20 years I had with students, where I could hear their voices." And as he wrote these things, he started to actually feel them. The gratitude stopped being an intellectual exercise and became an emotional experience. One morning, Graham was sitting in his garden watching birds move through the trees. He couldn't hear their songs anymore, but he could see them, could watch the intricate way they hopped from branch to branch, the flash of their wings as they took flight. Before his hearing loss, he would have been focused only on their sound, might not have even looked at them closely. Now, forced to rely on sight. He was noticing details he'd never seen before. The specific pattern of a tui's feathers, the delicate way a fantail tilted its head, the coordinated dance of sparrows moving as a group. He felt tears forming. But for the first time in months, they weren't purely tears of grief. They were something more complex. Sadness for what he'd lost. Yes, but also gratitude for what he was discovering. His hearing loss had forced him to pay attention differently, to notice aspects of the world he'd been blind to when sound dominated his experience. Graham began experimenting with music in new ways. He couldn't hear it the way he used to, but he could feel it. He would stand near speakers with the volume high and feel the vibrations move through his body. Bass lines he could feel in his chest. Percussion he could sense through the floor. It wasn't the same as hearing. Would never be the same. But it was something, a different kind of musical experience. One that was more physical, more embodied. He started researching how deaf musicians experienced music. Was amazed to discover percussionists like Evelyn Glennie, who performed barefoot to feel vibrations through the floor. Composers who wrote music they would never hear with their ears. These artists hadn't let deafness stop them from engaging with music. They had found different pathways, different methods, different definitions of what it meant to be musical. 6 months after his hearing loss began, Graham felt ready to try returning to work. But differently, he met with his principal and proposed a new role. Instead of teaching music performance, he would develop a program for students with disabilities, creating inclusive music experiences that didn't depend solely on hearing. He would teach students to feel rhythm through vibrations, to experience music through multiple senses, to understand that there were many ways to be musical. The principal was enthusiastic. The school had been wanting to improve accessibility but hadn't known how. Graham's lived experience with disability gave him insights no hearing teacher could have. Graham's first class in his new role included 3 students with hearing impairments, 2 students with visual impairments, and several students with autism who struggled in traditional music classes. He started by having everyone remove their shoes and stand on a wooden platform he'd built. Then he played music with strong bass lines through speakers placed beneath the platform. The students could feel the rhythm through their feet, could move their bodies to vibrations rather than sound. One student, a girl named Lily who was deaf from birth. I had tears in her eyes after the class. I've never experienced music before. She signed to Graham, who had been learning NZSL. Everyone always told me I was missing out, that I couldn't understand music because I can't hear. But this, feeling it in my body, moving to it, this is music. Thank you for showing me I can be part of it. Graham felt his heart crack open. This girl had been told her entire life that music wasn't for her, that she was excluded from something fundamental. And he, who had taken his hearing for granted for 52 years, got to be the person who showed her she belonged. That music was bigger than just sound, that there were multiple ways to experience it. That evening, Graham added to his gratitude journal, "Grateful for my hearing loss because it opened my eyes to students like Lily, who I never would have noticed or served when I could hear. Grateful for being forced to discover music in new ways. Grateful for the deaf community who welcomed me and taught me. Grateful for suffering that became the doorway to serving others who suffer." 8 months after his hearing loss, Graham attended a workshop on Buddhist teachings about gratitude and acceptance. The teacher, a monk named Tenzin, visiting from a monastery in Wellington, spoke about a concept that struck Graham deeply. The Buddha taught, Tenzin said, that we suffer when we fight with reality, when we insist things should be different than they are. The first arrow is the pain that life brings. Illness, loss, difficulty. These arrows hurt, truly hurt. But the second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves through our resistance, our belief that this shouldn't be happening, our narrative that we're being punished or that our life is ruined. Tenzin continued, gratitude practice helps us stop shooting the second arrow. We still feel the pain of the first arrow, the genuine loss, but we don't add the extra suffering of resistance and resentment. We can say, this is hard and I am grateful. Both truths coexist. Graham raised his hand. I lost most of my hearing 8 months ago. I still grieve what I lost. Some days the grief is overwhelming, but I'm also genuinely grateful for what the loss has taught me, for the students I now serve, for the ways it's deepened my appreciation for everything I still have. Is it wrong to be grateful for something that was also terrible? Tenzin smiled with understanding. Not wrong at all. This is mature gratitude. Immature gratitude is only being thankful when things go well. Mature gratitude recognizes that even difficult experiences can carry gifts, can teach us. We can open doors we didn't know existed. You don't have to be glad you lost your hearing, but you can be grateful for what you've learned through that loss, for who you've become because of it. He paused. There's a Zen story about a farmer whose horse runs away. His neighbor says, "Such bad luck," the farmer replies. Maybe. The next day, the horse returns with 3 wild horses. The neighbor says, "Such good luck," the farmer replies. Maybe. The farmer's son tries to tame one of the wild horses and breaks his leg. The neighbor says, "Such bad luck," the farmer replies. Maybe. The next week, soldiers come to draft young men for war, but they don't take the farmer's son because of his broken leg. The neighbor says, "Such good luck," the farmer replies. Maybe. Tenzin looked around the room. The teaching of this story is that we can't judge whether something is good or bad fortune in the moment. What looks like disaster might be blessing in disguise. What looks like blessing might carry hidden difficulty. The practice is to hold everything lightly, to be grateful for what we can learn from all experiences, and to trust that we can't see the full pattern while we're living inside it. Graham felt something settle in him at these words. His hearing loss had looked like pure catastrophe when it first happened. He had seen only loss, only what was taken from him. But 8 months later, he could see gifts hidden within the difficulty. Students he now served who he never would have noticed before. A relationship with Bronwyn that had deepened through their shared navigation of his disability. A gratitude practice that had transformed how he experienced everything. A humility he'd never possessed when things came easily. He still missed hearing, still grieved what was lost, but he was also genuinely grateful for what he'd gained. Both truths coexisted, and holding both was the practice of mature gratitude. 1 year after his hearing loss began, Graham organized a concert at his school featuring his students with disabilities. They performed using vibrations, visual cues, sign language, and adaptive instruments that allowed multiple ways of experiencing music. The auditorium was packed with families, other students, teachers, and members of the deaf community. Lily, the deaf student who had cried after her first class, performed a percussion piece she'd composed herself, feeling the rhythms through her body and translating them into complex patterns on drums and bells. A student with visual impairment sang, while another student signed the lyrics for deaf audience members. A student with autism who struggled with traditional performance created a piece using electronic music and visual projections that responded to sound waves. Watching these students, who had been told in various ways that music wasn't for them, creating and sharing their art with confidence and joy, Graham felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not generic thankfulness, but specific, fierce appreciation for this moment. These students, this opportunity to serve that he never would have had without his hearing loss. After the concert, a parent approached Graham with tears in her eyes. "My daughter has been deaf since birth. Every music teacher she's had told her she couldn't participate. That music class wasn't for her. You're the first person who ever included her, who showed her she belongs. You've given her a gift I thought she'd never have. Thank you." Graham felt his own tears starting. "She gave me a gift too. All these students did. They taught me that music is bigger than I ever understood, that there are infinite ways to experience and create it. I was a narrow-minded music teacher until I lost my hearing. Now I'm finally learning what music actually is." That evening, writing in his gratitude journal, Graham paused before writing. He had filled 3 journals over the past year with daily gratitudes, and the practice had literally saved his life, pulled him back from the edge of despair, given him a foundation to rebuild from. Tonight he wrote, "Grateful for every ear I could hear. Grateful for my hearing loss because it broke me open and let light in. Grateful for suffering that became service. Grateful for the deaf community who showed me belonging. Grateful for students who teach me as much as I teach them. Grateful for Bronwyn who stayed when I wanted to disappear. Grateful for this moment, this life, exactly as it is. Let your breath soften now, becoming gentle as a whisper." Graham's story teaches us that gratitude can coexist with grief, that we don't have to choose between acknowledging loss and appreciating what remains. He lost something precious and discovered gifts hidden within that loss. The loss was real, and the gifts were real. Both truths held together in the spaciousness of mature gratitude. This teaching about finding gratitude even in loss, even in difficulty, reveals itself across countless lives in different forms. Sometimes, the lesson comes not through losing a physical ability, but through losing a relationship we thought defined us. Discovering on the other side that we're more whole alone than we were while trying to fit ourselves into a partnership that had become too small. In the green countryside outside Galway, Ireland, there lived a woman named Siobhan, who had spent 18 years of her marriage slowly disappearing. She was 46 years old, a librarian at the university in the city, and she had married her husband Eamon when she was 28. Both of them young and certain. They'd found their forever person. The early years had been good, genuinely good, full of laughter and adventure and the easy intimacy of 2 people who fit together naturally. But somewhere around year 7 or 8, something began to shift. Eamon became more controlling, more critical, more insistent that things be done his way. It was subtle at first. Small comments about how Siobhan dressed, suggestions that became demands about how she spent her time, disapproval of her friends that gradually isolated her from people who cared about her. By year 15, Siobhan had become a ghost in her own life, making herself smaller and smaller to avoid conflict, suppressing her own opinions and preferences to keep peace. performing the role of dutiful wife, while the real Siobhan withered away inside. She told herself it was fine, that all marriages required compromise, that Eamon wasn't abusive, just strong-willed, that she should be grateful for the stability, the nice house, the financial security. She made gratitude lists in her head of what was good about her marriage, but they felt hollow because she was listing things while ignoring the fundamental truth. She was profoundly unhappy and had been for years. The crisis came on her 46th birthday. Eamon forgot entirely, didn't acknowledge it until Siobhan mentioned it that evening, and even then offered only a perfunctory apology with no gift, no celebration, no recognition that this day mattered. Siobhan stood in their kitchen feeling something inside her break, not dramatically but decisively, like a thread that had been fraying for years finally snapping. That night, she lay awake beside Eamon's sleeping form and asked herself a question she'd been avoiding for over a decade. If I could design my ideal life with no constraints, would Eamon be in it? The answer came immediately. Clearly, terrifyingly, no. The next morning, Siobhan called her sister Mariette, who she'd grown distant from because Eamon didn't like her, and said the words she'd been unable to speak for years. I need help. I need to leave my marriage. I don't know how, but I can't keep living like this. Marie's response was immediate and fierce. I've been waiting years for you to say that. Come, stay with me. Today, right now, we'll figure out the rest together. Within a week, Siobhan had moved into Marie's spare room in Clifton, a small coastal town an hour from Galway. She felt terrified, guilty, liberated, and lost all at once. Eamon was shocked when she told him she was leaving. I couldn't understand why she was throwing away their marriage. What more she could possibly want. His incomprehension confirmed what Siobhan already knew. He had never actually seen her, never known who she really was, beneath the performance of the dutiful wife. The first months after leaving were brutal. Despite the relief of being free, Siobhan felt unmoored, adrift without the identity and structure that marriage had provided for 18 years. She didn't know who she was as a single woman, what she liked when she wasn't considering Eamon's preferences, how to make decisions based solely on her own desires. She had spent so long making herself small that she'd forgotten how to take up space. Mariette watched her sister struggle with compassion but also with gentle firmness. One evening, about 2 months after Siobhan had moved in, Mariette made tea and sat her down at the kitchen table. I need to tell you something, and it might be hard to hear. You're free now. Siobhan, you left the cage, but you're still acting like you're in it. Still making yourself small. Still apologizing for taking up space. Still asking permission to exist. When are you going to actually claim your freedom? Siobhan felt defensive. I'm trying. It's not easy after 18 years of, I know it's not easy. Mariette interrupted gently. But at some point, you have to stop being a victim of what happened and start being the author of what happens next. You get to decide who you are now. You get to discover what you actually like, what you actually want. But you have to claim that power. No one can give it to you. The words stung, but they also rang true. Siobhan realized she'd been waiting for permission to be herself, waiting for someone to tell her it was okay to want things, to have opinions, to take up space. But that permission could only come from herself. That night, Siobhan started a practice suggested by a therapist Mariette had recommended. Each evening before bed, She would write down 3 things she was grateful for: about being single, about having left her marriage. The therapist had warned her this might feel uncomfortable, even wrong, like she was being ungrateful for the years with Eamon or glad the marriage ended. But the practice wasn't about denying those 18 years mattered. It was about acknowledging what she'd gained by leaving. The first night, Siobhan struggled. What was she grateful for? The loneliness? The uncertainty? The guilt of having hurt Eamon even though leaving was necessary? Finally, she wrote, "Grateful I can read in bed as late as I want, without someone complaining about the light. Grateful I can eat dinner at whatever time I'm hungry. Grateful for silence that feels peaceful instead of tense." These seemed like such small things, almost embarrassingly trivial. But as the weeks passed and she continued the practice, Siobhan began to notice larger shifts. "Grateful I can wear bright colors," Eamon said, "made me look ridiculous. Grateful I'm reconnecting with friends I'd lost. Grateful I can make decisions without consulting anyone. Grateful for discovering I actually love hiking and only stopped because Eamon hated it. Grateful for mornings when I wake up without that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach." 3 months after leaving, Siobhan joined a women's walking group that met every Saturday morning to hike the trails around Connemara. She was nervous the first time. Hadn't done anything social without Eamon in years. He didn't know how to talk to people without filtering everything through worry about what he would think. But the women in the group were warm and welcoming. Didn't ask invasive questions about why she'd recently moved to Clifton. Just accepted her presence and included her in their easy conversation. One woman, named Fiona, fell into step beside Siobhan on the trail. "First time hiking with us? First time hiking in about 10 years. Siobhan admitted. "I forgot how much I used to love it." "What made you stop?" Fiona asked. Siobhan paused, then decided to be honest. "My husband didn't like it, so I stopped. I stopped a lot of things I loved because he didn't like them. I left the marriage a few months ago and I'm trying to remember who I am underneath all the years of making myself fit someone else's preferences." Fiona nodded with recognition. "I know that journey. I did it 10 years ago when I left my first marriage. It's disorienting at first, not knowing who you are when you're not performing a role. But it's also the most profound freedom you'll ever experience. You get to discover yourself fresh, choose what you actually want, build a life that's authentically yours." Over the following months, Siobhan did exactly that. She started painting again, something she'd loved in university but abandoned because Eamon said it was a waste of time. She joined a book club and discovered she had strong opinions about literature that she'd been suppressing for years. She took a pottery class and found unexpected joy in working with clay, in creating something with her hands. She let her hair grow long instead of keeping it short, the way Eamon preferred. She bought clothes in colors that made her feel vibrant instead of the muted tones Eamon thought were appropriate. Each small choice to honor her own preferences instead of defaulting to what someone else wanted felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd lost. And each evening, she wrote in her gratitude journal about what she was discovering, what she was grateful for in this new life. 6 months after leaving her marriage, Siobhan was walking along the beach in Clifton when she ran into her old university professor, Dr. Catherine Murphy, who had retired to the area. They recognized each other immediately and fell into easy conversation. Catherine invited Siobhan for tea, and they spent the afternoon talking about books, life, the winding paths that had brought them both to this coastal town. "I remember you," Catherine said as they sat in her cottage overlooking the sea. "You were one of my brightest students, but you were always so uncertain, always asking what the right answer was instead of trusting your own interpretation. I wondered what happened to you, whether you ever found that confidence." Siobhan felt tears prick her eyes. "I didn't. I married someone who convinced me my thoughts weren't as valid as his, who made me doubt myself constantly. I spent 18 years making myself smaller and smaller. I'm only now learning to trust my own mind again." Catherine reached over and squeezed her hand. "The self you suppressed didn't disappear, Siobhan. It was just waiting. And now you have the gift of rediscovering it with the wisdom of age, with the knowledge of what happens when you betray yourself. That's valuable. Painful, but valuable. I'm trying to be grateful for the marriage even though it was difficult," Siobhan said. "My therapist talks about mature gratitude, being able to appreciate what you learned even from hard experiences. But some days I'm just angry about the years I wasted." Catherine nodded. "Both feelings can coexist. You can be angry about the time you lost and grateful for what you learned. You can regret staying as long as you did and appreciate that you finally found the courage to leave. Life isn't binary. We hold multiple truths simultaneously." That conversation stayed with Siobhan. She started trying to find genuine gratitude for her marriage. Not the hollow gratitude she'd performed while in it, but real appreciation for what those 18 years had taught her. She wrote in her journal, "Grateful the marriage taught me what I don't want, what I won't accept, what my non-negotiables are in relationship. Grateful it taught me how strong I am to survive 18 years of making myself small and still emerge intact. Grateful it taught me to value myself enough to leave when staying meant betraying who I am." 1 year after leaving Amen, Siobhan was offered an opportunity that terrified and excited her in equal measure. The library where she worked was starting a reading program for women who had experienced domestic abuse, creating a safe space for them to gather, read together, and share their stories. The director asked Siobhan if she would facilitate the group. Knowing her own recent history of leaving a controlling marriage, Siobhan's first instinct was to say no, to hide the fact that she understood these women's experiences from the inside. But something made her say yes instead, made her willing to be vulnerable, to share her story in service of others who were struggling. The first meeting of the reading group, 8 women gathered in a quiet room at the library, most of them nervous, unsure what to expect. Siobhan introduced herself honestly. "I left my marriage a year ago after 18 years of slowly losing myself. My husband wasn't physically violent, but he was controlling in ways that made me doubt my own mind, my own worth. I made myself smaller and smaller until I barely existed. I'm still learning who I am without that relationship, still discovering what I actually want and like and believe." She saw recognition in several faces, the relief of knowing they weren't alone, that someone understood. Over the following weeks, as they read books together and discussed them, the women began to open up. One woman named Deirdre said something that struck Siobhan deeply. "I feel guilty for leaving. My husband gave me a nice house, financial security. I should be grateful for what I had, but I was dying inside and gratitude felt like a cage." Siobhan understood this perfectly. Real gratitude isn't about being grateful for a cage, even a comfortable one. You can appreciate the security you had while also acknowledging it came at too high a cost. Mature gratitude means being able to say, "I'm grateful for what I learned from that relationship, and I'm grateful I had the courage to leave it." Both truths coexist. Another woman, Aifa, asked, "How do you stop feeling like you wasted years? I was married for 12 years, and I look back at that time as just lost. It's gone. Wasted on someone who didn't truly see me." Siobhan thought about Catherine's words, about the conversation with her therapist, about her own journey toward gratitude for difficult experiences. "I'm learning that nothing is wasted if we learn from it. Those 18 years taught me what I don't want, taught me the cost of betraying myself, taught me to value my own voice and opinions. I wish I'd learned those lessons differently, without the pain. But I can't change the past. I can only extract meaning from it, find gratitude for what it taught me, even while grieving the time it took." The reading group became a sanctuary for all of them, a place where they could be honest about their struggles while also celebrating their courage in leaving, in starting over, in choosing themselves. Siobhan found that facilitating the group was healing her own wounds in unexpected ways. Witnessing other women's journeys toward freedom reinforced her own, reminded her weekly why she'd left, what she'd gained by choosing herself. 18 months after leaving Amen, Siobhan met someone who challenged everything she thought she knew about relationships. His name was Killian, a marine biologist who worked at the aquarium in South Hill. They met at a lecture about ocean conservation that Siobhan attended on a whim, drawn by her newfound freedom to pursue interests simply because they interested her. Cillian was different from Eamon in every conceivable way. Where Eamon had been controlling, Killian was curious about Siobhan's thoughts and opinions. Where Eamon had been critical, Killian was encouraging. Where Eamon had made her feel small, Killian seemed genuinely delighted by her taking up space, having strong preferences, being fully herself. After their third date, Siobhan had a panic attack. She called Myreed in tears. "I like him so much, and I'm terrified. What if I lose myself again? What if I start making myself small to keep him happy? What if I can't trust my own judgment after getting it so wrong with Eamon?" Myreed's response was gentle but firm. "You're not the same person who married Eamon at 28. You're 47 now. You've done deep work on yourself. You know what happens when you betray yourself to make someone else happy. Trust that you won't make the same mistakes because you're not the same person." Siobhan realized her sister was right. She had changed fundamentally. The woman who left Eamon wouldn't tolerate what the young woman who married him had accepted. She had developed boundaries, self-respect, a clear sense of what she would and wouldn't accept in relationship. These hard-won qualities weren't fragile. They were bedrock. She continued seeing Killian, but slowly, carefully, watching how he responded when she expressed preferences that differed from his, when she said no to something he wanted, when she chose time with friends over time with him. And Cillian responded beautifully, respected her boundaries, seemed to genuinely want her to be fully herself rather than a version of herself that made his life easier. One evening, about 6 months into their relationship, they were walking on the beach near Cillian's cottage. He asked her something that made her pause. "You've never really talked about your marriage, about why it ended. I don't need details if you're not ready, but I'd like to understand what you need from me, what you need to feel safe in this relationship." Siobhan felt her chest tighten with old fear, but she pushed through it. "I need to know you'll respect my opinions even when they differ from yours. I need to know you won't make me feel bad for having preferences and boundaries. I need to know I can be fully myself without you trying to change me or make me smaller." I spent 18 years making myself disappear, and I will never do that again. Ever. I'd rather be alone. Killian stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. Siobhan, I don't want you smaller. I want you exactly as you are. Big and bright and opinionated and strong. If I ever make you feel like you need to shrink yourself, please tell me immediately so I can change my behavior. That's not the kind of partner I want to be. Siobhan felt tears streaming down her face. I'm grateful for my terrible marriage because it taught me to recognize a good man when I find one. I wouldn't know how rare what you're offering is if I hadn't experienced the opposite. That's strange to say, but it's true. Killian pulled her into a hug. I'm grateful for whatever path brought you here, even the painful parts. But I'm sorry you had to suffer to learn what you deserved. That night, writing in her gratitude journal, Siobhan reflected on how far she'd come. 2 years ago, she'd been trapped in a marriage that was slowly killing her spirit. Now she was free, fully herself, surrounded by genuine friendships, doing meaningful work with the reading group, in a relationship with someone who celebrated rather than diminished her. The journey from there to here had been terrifying and painful and necessary. She wrote, grateful for the courage to leave, even when I was terrified. Grateful for Mered, who gave me refuge. Grateful for the 18 years with Eamon because they taught me what I won't accept. Grateful for the women in the reading group who teach me as much as I teach them. Grateful for Cillian, who shows me what healthy love looks like. Grateful for discovering who I am when I'm not performing for someone else. Grateful for every painful step that led me here. 2 years after leaving her marriage, Siobhan was invited to speak at a women's conference in Dublin about rebuilding life after leaving difficult relationships. She stood before a room of 200 women and shared her journey with complete honesty. For 18 years, she told them, I made myself smaller and smaller to fit into a marriage that required me to disappear. I convinced myself I should be grateful for what I had. The security, the nice house, the stability. But that gratitude was hollow because it required me to betray myself. Real gratitude doesn't ask us to be thankful for cages, even comfortable ones. She paused, looking at the faces watching her. When I finally left, I felt guilty, like I was being ungrateful, like I should have appreciated what I had. But my therapist taught me about mature gratitude, the ability to hold multiple truths. I can be grateful for what I learned from those 18 years, while also being grateful I had the courage to leave. I can appreciate the security the marriage provided while acknowledging it came at too high a cost. Both truths are real. A woman in the audience raised her hand. But how do you get to that place of gratitude? Right now, I'm just angry about the years I wasted. Siobhan nodded with recognition. The anger is valid and necessary. Feel it completely. But alongside the anger, you can also practice gratitude for small things, for the courage it took to leave, for the friends who supported you, for discovering your own strength. Gratitude doesn't replace anger. It coexists with it. And over time, as you heal, the gratitude grows while the anger softens. After her talk, dozens of women approached her, many in tears, thanking her for putting words to their experiences, for showing them that leaving was possible, that they could rebuild. One woman, perhaps in her 60 seconds, said, I've been in a controlling marriage for 35 years. I thought I was too old to leave, too late to start over. Your story gives me hope that it's never too late to choose yourself. Siobhan took the woman's hands. It's not too late. I left at 46, and I'm 48 now. Some people leave at 60. At Shop des Age. Age is irrelevant. The question is whether you're willing to claim your own life. Whether you're willing to discover who you are when you're not performing for someone else. That's available at any age. Driving back to Clifton that evening, Siobhan thought about the web of connection that her suffering had created. Her painful marriage had led to leaving, which led to the gratitude practice, which led to facilitating the reading group, which led to speaking at the conference, which would ripple outward to touch women she'd never meet. Nothing was wasted. The suffering had become service. The lesson learned had become teaching offered. Her liberation was helping others find their own. Let your breathing deepen now, becoming slower, like gentle waves lapping at the shore. Siobhan's story teaches us that gratitude doesn't mean being thankful for harmful situations. It means extracting meaning from difficult experiences, appreciating what we learned, even while acknowledging the cost. She can be grateful for leaving her marriage and grateful for what the marriage taught her. Both truths held in the spacious container of mature gratitude. This teaching about finding gratitude even in life's difficulties, even in experiences we wish we'd never had, reveals itself across countless lives in infinite forms. Sometimes the lesson comes not through relationship loss or physical disability, but through facing our own mortality, through illness that forces us to appreciate what we took for granted while we had it. In the sprawling suburbs of Calgary, Alberta, there lived a man named Kenneth who had spent 58 years of his life treating time as infinite. He was a geologist, spent his career studying rocks that were millions of years old. And something about working with deep time made him forget that his own time was limited, precious, finite. He would tell his children he'd visit them next month, next year, whenever work calmed down. He would promise his wife they'd take that trip to Nova Scotia she'd been dreaming about. But there was always a project, always a deadline, always a reason to postpone. Kenneth lived in the future, always planning, always preparing for someday, never quite present for the life he was actually living. His days blurred together in a haze of work emails, meetings, reports, the urgent crowding out the important, the immediate overshadowing the meaningful. Then, one Tuesday in March, Kenneth went to the doctor for what he thought was persistent indigestion. 3 days and several tests later, the oncologist delivered news that shattered Kenneth's illusion of infinite time. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. Advanced. Aggressive. Maybe 6 months. Maybe less. Treatment options limited. Primarily palliative. Kenneth heard the words but couldn't absorb them. 6 months. Half a year. How could his entire remaining life fit into 6 months when he'd been assuming he had decades left? The trips he'd postponed, the conversations he'd avoided, the time with his grandchildren he'd sacrificed for work. All of it suddenly exposed as catastrophic miscalculation. He had been treating life like he had unlimited resources, when actually he was already spending his last reserves without knowing it. The first weeks after the diagnosis, Kenneth spiraled into despair so profound it felt like drowning. Not fear of death itself, though that was present, but overwhelming regret for how he'd lived, for all the moments he'd missed while planning for a future that wasn't coming. His wife Lauren tried to comfort him, tried to help him focus on the time remaining rather than the time lost. But Kenneth was trapped in a loop of should have, could have, Why didn't I? One evening about a month after the diagnosis, Kenneth's daughter Melissa visited with her 2 children. His grandchildren, ages 7 and 9. Kenneth had barely spent time with them over the years. Always too busy with work. Always promising he'd be more present later when things calmed down. Now later had run out. The children were shy around him, didn't know him well enough to be comfortable. They sat on the couch, making polite conversation while Kenneth felt the weight of all the relationship he'd failed to build with them. All the memories they should have shared, but didn't because he'd been too busy, too focused on work, too convinced there would be more time. After the children left, Melissa stayed behind. She looked at her father with tears in her eyes. "Dad, you're dying. I know that. You know that. We probably have a few months left together. Are you going to spend those months drowning in regret? Or are you going to actually be here for whatever time remains?" Kenneth felt the words land like stones. His daughter was right. He could spend his remaining months trapped in regret, cataloging everything he'd done wrong, mourning the life he should have lived. Or he could actually show up for the life he still had, however brief. "I don't know how," Kenneth admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to be present. I've spent 58 years living in the future, planning, preparing, postponing. I don't know how to just be here now." Melissa sat beside him and took his hand. "Then learn. You have a few months. That's more time than many people get. Use it. Be here with us. Let us know you before you're gone." The next morning, Lauren found Kenneth sitting in their backyard watching the sunrise, something he couldn't remember ever doing in all the years they'd lived in this house. "I've seen maybe 5 sunrises in my entire adult life," he said when she joined him. "I was always too busy sleeping or getting ready for work. This morning I woke up and thought, how many more will I get to see? 20? 30? Suddenly each one feels precious." Lauren squeezed his hand. "This is what I've been trying to tell you for 30 years. Every moment is precious. You just needed to lose most of your moments to finally notice the ones you have left." That afternoon, Kenneth had an appointment with a palliative care specialist named Dr. Fest, Sarah Chen, who would help manage his symptoms as the cancer progressed. She was a woman in her 42s, with kind eyes and a gentle directness that Kenneth found comforting. "How are you doing emotionally with the diagnosis?" she asked, after reviewing his medical details. Kenneth felt tears rise. "I'm drowning in regret. I wasted so much time. I treated life like I had unlimited resources, and now I'm discovering I'm already broke. I'm almost out of time and I squandered what I had." "Doctor," Chen nodded with understanding. "That's a very common response. We think we have forever until we discover we don't. But can I suggest something? Instead of focusing on the time you wasted, what if you focused on being grateful for the time you still have? You have months." "Kenneth, that's a gift many people don't get. Some people die suddenly with no warning, no chance to say goodbye, no opportunity to live intentionally. You have that chance. How can I be grateful for 6 months when I should have had decades?" Kenneth asked. "Because gratitude for what you have is more useful than resentment about what you've lost." "Doctor," Chen said gently, "I work with dying patients every day. The ones who suffer most aren't necessarily the ones in the most physical pain. They're the ones who can't let go of how things should have been, who spend their final months angry about the time they're losing instead of appreciating the time they still have." She leaned forward slightly. There's a Buddhist practice I share with many of my patients. Each day, before you do anything else, bring to mind 3 things you're grateful for. Not big things necessarily. Small things. This morning's sunrise. Your wife's hand in yours. The fact that today you're still alive, still able to think and feel and love. This practice won't change your prognosis, but it will change how you experience the time you have left. Kenneth felt resistant. Gratitude feels like lying to myself, like pretending everything is fine when I'm dying. Gratitude isn't pretending everything is fine. Dr. Chen said, it's acknowledging what is good, even while what is hard is also true. You're dying and you can still taste your morning coffee. You're running out of time and you still have time. You've lost your future and you still have your present. All of these truths coexist. Gratitude asks you to notice the good ones alongside the difficult ones. That evening, lying in bed beside Lauren, Kenneth decided to try the practice. Dr. Chen suggested I practice gratitude. Will you do it with me? Lauren's face lit up. I'd love that. They each shared 3 things they were grateful for. Lauren went first. I'm grateful Kenneth is still here with me tonight. Grateful we have this time to say what needs to be said. Grateful for 32 years of marriage, even though I wish we had more. Kenneth felt his throat tighten. I'm grateful you're patient with me while I learn how to actually be present. Grateful that I got the diagnosis instead of dying suddenly, so I have time to do this differently. Grateful for this bed, this room, this ordinary moment that I never noticed before but now feels sacred. Over the following weeks, the gratitude practice became Kenneth's anchor. Some mornings it felt impossible to find things to appreciate when his body was failing, when pain was increasing, when fear threatened to overwhelm him. But he kept practicing, kept searching for what was still good, still working, still available to be grateful for. Grateful for morphine that manages the pain. Grateful for Lauren's face when she smiles at me. Grateful for my daughter's forgiveness for all the times I wasn't there. Grateful for my grandchildren who are getting to know me finally. Grateful for bacon and eggs, for being able to still taste them. Grateful for this breath, and this one, and this one. 3 months after his diagnosis, Kenneth asked Melissa to bring the children over for an afternoon. Instead of the awkward formal visits they'd had before, Kenneth took them to the backyard and taught them about rocks, the thing he'd spent his career studying but never shared with his own grandchildren. He showed them how to identify different types, explained how pressure and time could transform ordinary stone into something beautiful, told them stories about the ancient earth these rocks had witnessed. His 7-year-old grandson Owen held a piece of quartz up to the light, watching it sparkle. Grandpa, this is so cool. Can we do this every week? Kenneth felt his heart crack open. Yes, every week that I can. We'll do this. I'm sorry I didn't do it sooner, that I waited until now. Melissa, watching from the porch, had tears streaming down her face. Later, as she was leaving, she hugged her father fiercely. This is who I needed you to be my whole childhood. I'm so grateful we get this time, even though I wish we'd had it years ago. Me too, Kenneth whispered. I'm so sorry I wasted so much time, but I'm grateful, genuinely grateful, that I get these weeks with you and the kids, that the cancer is slow enough to give me time to show up for what matters. 4 months after the diagnosis, Kenneth's condition began to decline more rapidly. He was sleeping more, eating less, his body clearly preparing for the end. But his spirit had transformed in ways that amazed everyone who knew him. The man who had been perpetually stressed, always rushing, never present, had become calm, appreciative, fully engaged with whatever moment he was in. One afternoon, Kenneth's colleague Peter visited, bringing work documents he thought Kenneth might want to review. Kenneth waved them away. "I don't care about that anymore. I spent 40 years caring about that work, and now I can barely remember why it seemed so important. You know what I care about? I care that Lauren is in the other room making soup and the smell is drifting in here. I care that I can see the tree outside my window with leaves turning gold. I care that you came to visit, that you're here with me. That's what matters. The work doesn't matter at all." Peter looked uncomfortable. "Kenneth, you built something significant. Your research mattered." "Maybe," Kenneth said, "but not as much as being present for my family. Not as much as noticing sunrises and teaching my grandchildren about rocks and telling my wife I love her. I got my priorities completely backwards for 58 years. I'm grateful I got a few months to realize it and do things differently, even though I wish I'd figured it out decades ago." After Peter left, Lauren came in and sat beside Kenneth's bed. "I heard what you said to him about priorities." Kenneth took her hand. "I owe you the biggest apology. I gave you scraps of my attention for 32 years while giving my best energy to work. I thought there would be time later to focus on us, on our life together. I was so wrong." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "I won't say it didn't hurt, because it did. I felt lonely in our marriage, felt like I came second to your career. But these last few months, you've been more present than in all the years before. I'm grateful for that, even though the cost is losing you. I'm grateful you stayed," Kenneth said. "I'm grateful you didn't give up on me even when I was barely showing up for our marriage. I'm grateful for every moment we have left, and I promise to be completely here for all of them." 5 months after his diagnosis, Kenneth organized a family gathering. His children, his grandchildren, his siblings, even some close friends. He was weak by then, spending most of his time in bed, but he insisted on having everyone together. With his family gathered around, Kenneth spoke from his heart. "I asked you all to come because I need to say some things while I still can. I've spent the last 5 months learning about gratitude, really learning it. Not just the concept, but the lived experience of appreciating what you have instead of mourning what you've lost." He paused, gathering strength. "I'm dying. We all know that. In a few weeks, maybe less, I'll be gone. I could spend this time angry about the decades I won't get, resentful that this is happening, fighting against reality. And for the first month after diagnosis, that's exactly what I did. But it was torture. Fighting with what is doesn't change what is. It just adds suffering on top of pain." His grandson, Owen, now understanding more than he had months ago, asked quietly, "Aren't you scared, Grandpa?" Kenneth considered the question honestly. "Yes, I'm scared, but I'm also grateful. Grateful for 58 years of life, even though I wasted too much of it not paying attention. Grateful for your grandmother who stayed with me through everything. Grateful for your mom and your uncle who are giving me grace even though I wasn't the father I should have been. Grateful for you and your sister who are teaching me what matters by just being yourselves." He looked around at all the faces watching him. Here's what I've learned. What I desperately wish I'd understood earlier. Every moment is precious. Every single ordinary moment. The ones we think don't matter. The breakfast conversations and bedtime rituals and lazy Sunday mornings. Those are the moments that make up a life. I missed thousands of those moments because I thought they weren't important. Thought the important stuff was elsewhere. In meetings and projects and achievements. Tears were flowing freely around the room now. Kenneth's daughter Rachel spoke up, her voice thick with emotion. Dad, we forgive you. We see you now. Showing up. Being present. That matters more than you know. I'm grateful for your forgiveness. Kenneth said, grateful beyond words. But I also want you all to learn from my mistake. Don't wait until you're dying to figure out what matters. Don't postpone living until later. Later might not come. This moment. Right now. With the people you love. This is it. This is your life. Be here for it. 6 weeks after that gathering, Kenneth died peacefully at home with Lauren beside him, holding his hand. His final words, whispered to his wife, were, "Thank you for everything. I'm so grateful." At his memorial service, Melissa shared something her father had said in one of their last conversations. Dad told me that getting cancer was the worst thing and the best thing that happened to him. Worst because it was ending his life. Best because it woke him up to actually living. He said he'd spent 58 years sleepwalking and only woke up when he had 6 months left. He said, "Tell people not to wait. Tell them to wake up now. While there's still time. Let your breathing slow now. Becoming gentle as a whisper." Kenneth's story teaches us that gratitude becomes most powerful when we recognize time's preciousness. When we understand that every moment is borrowed. Every day a gift. He lived 58 years taking time for granted, then spent 6 months fully awake, fully present, fully grateful. Both his wasted years and his conscious dying taught the same lesson. Appreciate what you have while you have it. Don't wait until loss forces you to notice abundance. These stories, Harriet and Lily, Thomas and his construction accident, Claudia and her divorce, Owen and his breakdown, Victoria and her emptiness despite success, Graham and his hearing loss, Siobhan and her liberation from a controlling marriage, Kenneth and his terminal diagnosis. They all point to the same truth. Gratitude isn't about pretending difficulty doesn't exist. It's about training ourselves to notice what is good, what is working, what we do have, even while acknowledging what is hard, what is broken, what we've lost. The Buddha taught that we suffer when we relate to life with tanha, with the constant feeling that this moment isn't enough, that we need something else, something more, something different to be okay. We chase after what we don't have. We mourn what we've lost. We fail to appreciate what's already here because our attention is always elsewhere, always focused on lack rather than abundance. Gratitude is the antidote to tanya. It trains the mind to notice what is present rather than only seeing what is absent, to appreciate what is working rather than only focusing on what's broken, to recognize the gifts that exist in this moment rather than postponing happiness until some future moment when conditions are perfect. And here is the profound paradox. When we practice gratitude, when we learn to appreciate what we have, we often discover we have far more than we realized. Not because anything external changed, but because we changed how we looked, what we paid attention to, what we allowed ourselves to notice. Victoria had a beautiful apartment, meaningful work, financial security, but she saw none of it because she was focused only on what she still lacked. Gratitude practice didn't change her circumstances. It changed her perception of her circumstances. She started noticing the sunrise she'd been watching without seeing for years. She started tasting the coffee she'd been drinking on autopilot. She started appreciating relationships she'd been taking for granted. Nothing external changed, but everything internal transformed. Graham lost his hearing and thought he'd lost everything that made life worth living. But gratitude practice helped him discover what remained. His sight, his relationships, the students he could serve in new ways, the deaf community who welcomed him, the ability to experience music through vibration rather than sound. He still grieved what he lost, but he could also appreciate what he'd gained, what he'd discovered, what had opened up through the very loss that seemed to close everything down. Siobhan spent 18 years in a marriage that required her to disappear, and she convinced herself she should be grateful for the security it provided. But that gratitude was hollow because it required her to betray herself. When she finally left, when she claimed her freedom, she discovered real gratitude, mature gratitude that could hold multiple truths. She could be grateful for what the difficult marriage taught her about her own strength, about what she would and wouldn't accept, about the cost of making herself small. And she could also be grateful she found the courage to leave, to choose herself, to build a life that was authentically hers. Both truths coexisted in the spacious container of genuine appreciation. Kenneth spent 58 years treating time as infinite, postponing living until later, convinced he had unlimited resources. Then cancer gave him 6 months, and suddenly every moment became precious. Every sunrise, a gift. Every conversation sacred. He couldn't get back the decades he'd wasted, but he could be grateful for the months he had left, could use them to finally show up, to finally be present, to finally live consciously instead of sleepwalking through his days. The diagnosis that ended his life also woke him up to actually living it. This is the teaching that runs through all these stories like a golden thread. Nothing is wasted when we extract meaning from it. Every difficulty, every loss, every closed door, every painful experience can become a teacher if we're willing to learn from it. If we practice gratitude for the lessons, even while acknowledging the cost. Breathe deeply now, feeling your body grow heavier with each exhale, sinking deeper into rest. You've heard these stories tonight, not to remember them consciously, but to let them work on you at deeper levels, to plant seeds that will sprout when you need them most. The specific details don't matter as much as the essential teaching that weaves through all of them. Gratitude transforms how we experience life, not by changing what happens to us, but by changing how we relate to what happens. You can practice this right now, in this moment, even as you're drifting towards sleep. Bring to mind 3 things, just 3, that you're genuinely grateful for in your life, as it actually is, not as you wish it were. They don't need to be big dramatic things. The most powerful gratitudes are often the smallest, the ones we take for granted until we pause to notice them. Maybe you're grateful for the bed beneath you, soft and supportive, holding you as you rest. Maybe you're grateful for the ability to hear these words, to understand language, to absorb meaning. Maybe you're grateful for this breath moving through your body without you having to think about it. And this breath. And this breath. Maybe you're grateful for people who love you, even imperfectly. Maybe you're grateful for challenges you've survived, for strength you've discovered through difficulty, for lessons learned the hard way that have made you who you are. Whatever arises for you, let yourself actually feel the gratitude, not just think it. Let appreciation move through your chest, warm and real. This feeling, this genuine thankfulness for what is, rather than what should be. This is the practice that can transform suffering into grace, that can help you notice abundance in the midst of difficulty, that can teach you to hold both truths simultaneously. This is hard, and I am blessed. The Buddha taught his students a meditation practice called the reflection on gratitude. He instructed them to regularly contemplate all the people who had helped them, all the conditions that made their current life possible, all the invisible gifts they received daily without noticing, the food that appeared on their plates grown by farmers they'd never meet, the clothes on their backs sewn by hands they'd never see, the roads they walked built by workers from generations past, the language they spoke passed down through centuries, the kindnesses of strangers, the patience of teachers, the sacrifices of parents, the loyalty of friends. When his students practiced this reflection regularly, they began to see that they existed in a vast web of interconnection, that nothing they had was entirely their own doing, that they were supported by countless seen and unseen contributions. This recognition naturally gave rise to gratitude, to appreciation, to humility. And from that gratitude flowed generosity, the desire to give back to the web that held them, to support others as they had been supported. This is the ripple effect of gratitude practice. It doesn't just change how we feel individually. It changes how we move through the world, how we treat others, what we contribute. When we're aware of our abundance, even small abundance, generosity flows naturally. When we appreciate what we've been given, we want to give in return. The practice of gratitude creates a cycle of appreciation and contribution that radiates outward, touching people we may never meet. Victoria's gratitude practice didn't just make her happier. It changed how she showed up at work, how she treated Keiko and her other colleagues, what kind of projects she chose to pursue. Her transformation rippled outward, touching everyone in her sphere, creating conditions for their own awakenings. When she spoke at that conference, sharing her journey from emptiness despite success to fulfillment through gratitude, her words planted seeds in hundreds of people who would carry those teachings forward, would practice gratitude themselves, would share it with others. The web keeps expanding infinitely. Graham's hearing loss led him to create inclusive music programs that serve students with disabilities, students who had been told music wasn't for them. Lily, the deaf student, experienced music for the first time through his teaching. She will carry that gift forward into her own life, will perhaps teach others, will contribute to making the world more accessible. Graham's loss became service, became ripples of inclusion, spreading outward in ways he'll never fully see or know. Siobhan's painful marriage and subsequent liberation led her to facilitate a reading group for women leaving abusive relationships. Each woman in that group will take what she learns and carry it forward into her own life, her own relationships, her own future. Some of those women will go on to help others who are struggling. The teaching spreads, the wisdom multiplies, all because Siobhan found gratitude even for the difficult experiences that taught her what she needed to know. This is how gratitude changes the world. One heart at a time. One practice at a time. One person waking up and helping another person wake up. And that person helping another. And another. The chain of awakening extending infinitely forward into a future we cannot see. Let your breathing become so soft now. So gentle. Barely a whisper. Your body knows how to sleep. Knows how to let go. Knows how to surrender to rest. You don't have to do anything. Force anything. Make anything happen. Just allow. Just release. Just sink. As you drift deeper into rest, let all these teachings settle into you like seeds planted in fertile soil. You don't need to remember the specific stories, the names, the details. The wisdom is finding you at levels deeper than conscious thought, working on you even as you sleep, preparing you to see your own life differently when you wake. You are held right now by the same web of interconnection that held Victoria and Graham and Siobhan and Kenneth and all the others. You are supported by countless seen and unseen gifts. The bed beneath you was made by hands you'll never meet. The roof over your head was built by workers whose names you don't know. The food you ate today was grown, harvested, transported, prepared by a chain of people contributing to your sustenance. The language in your mind was passed down through generations. The love you've received, imperfect as it may have been, shaped who you are. You exist in a vast web of giving and receiving, of contribution and support, of interconnection so intricate you couldn't map it if you tried. And when you practice gratitude, when you pause to notice and appreciate this web that holds you, you naturally want to give back, to contribute, to support others as you've been supported. This is how gratitude heals not just individuals but communities, societies, the whole human family. The practice is simple but profound. Each morning when you wake, before reaching for your phone, before letting your mind race toward your to-do list, pause. Bring to mind 3 things you're grateful for. Some days they'll be big, obvious things. Some days they'll be small, almost invisible things. The practice works either way. You're training your mind to notice abundance instead of only seeing scarcity, to appreciate what you have instead of only mourning what you lack. This doesn't mean pretending difficulties don't exist. Gratitude isn't toxic positivity, isn't spiritual bypassing, isn't denying pain. It's holding both truths simultaneously. This is hard, and I am blessed. I am struggling, and I have so much. I have lost something precious, and I am grateful for the time I had. Life is difficult, and life is full of gifts. Both are true. Always both. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is tanha, the constant feeling that this moment isn't enough, that we need something else to be okay. We chase after what we don't have. We cling to what we're afraid of losing. We push away what we don't like. We fail to appreciate what's already here because we're convinced happiness is somewhere else, some other time, some other circumstance. Gratitude interrupts this pattern. It brings us back to this moment, to what is actually here, to what is actually working, not denying what needs to change or improve, but acknowledging what is already good, already functioning, already worthy of appreciation. This simple shift in attention, from lack to abundance, from missing to present, from future to now, this changes everything. You have everything you need in this moment to practice gratitude. You have breath moving through your body. You have awareness to notice that breath. You have a mind capable of appreciation. You have this moment, right now, which will never come again. Unique and precious, simply because it exists. Rest now in this knowing. You are enough, exactly as you are. This moment is enough, exactly as it is. You don't need to be different, better, more accomplished, more enlightened. You just need to be here, present, aware, grateful for the simple miracle of existence. As you sink deeper into sleep, imagine all the people across the world who are also seeking peace tonight, who are also learning to practice gratitude, who are also discovering that abundance exists not in having more but in appreciating what's already here. You are connected to all of them in this moment, part of the vast web of humans learning to wake up, to pay attention, to appreciate the precious gift of being alive. May you sleep deeply and peacefully tonight. May you wake tomorrow with gratitude in your heart, ready to notice the small miracles that fill ordinary days. May you appreciate the people who love you, the body that carries you, the breath that sustains you, the life that unfolds moment by moment, whether you're paying attention or not. May you hold both truths always. This is difficult and this is sacred. I am struggling and I am blessed. Life is full of suffering and life is full of gifts. May you practice gratitude not to deny pain but to ensure pain isn't all you see. To balance acknowledgement of difficulty with appreciation of what remains, what endures, what is still good even when things are hard. May you remember that nothing is wasted when we learn from it. Every difficulty teaches. Every loss deepens. Every closed door steers toward open doors we cannot yet see. Trust the pattern even when you cannot see it. Trust that your life has meaning even when meaning feels elusive. Trust that you are held by forces larger than yourself, part of something vast and interconnected and sacred. Sleep now, dear one. Sleep deeply. Let go completely. Trust that you are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. The universe that created you continues to sustain you. The breath that breathes you continues without your effort. The heart that beats in your chest knows what to do. You can rest. You can release. You can surrender to sleep. Tomorrow will come with its own challenges and gifts. But tonight, right now, there is only this, the simple practice of resting, of breathing, of being grateful for this moment, this breath, this life, exactly as it is. Everything happens for a reason. Your life is that reason revealing itself moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. You are the universe experiencing itself, learning gratitude, discovering abundance, waking up to the precious gift of existence. Rest now in this truth. Sleep deeply in this knowing. Wake tomorrow, ready to practice, to notice, to appreciate, to give thanks for the ordinary miracles that make up a life well lived. You are loved. You are held. You are enough. Good night.